I'm sure all of you gave this challenge a good try, and I'm sure most of you guys have covered your fitness class with 100% code coverage and might have written some pretty nice tests to check the functionality of both the methods. But I still recommend all of you guys to watch this video to see how we should plan a unit test and how many unit tests we can write for one single method. So let's try to break it down for each method. First, we are going to talk about the calculate BMI method. So I think there should be total 5 tests for this one single method, and all of these 5 tests will be testing this method for different values. The first test case is a very positive scenario where weight is also a positive number and height is also a positive number, and the result that we are expecting from this method is 41.67, and this is what I got when I divided weight by height square. The test case 2 is when the weight is 0 but height is a positive number. In this case the BMI should be 0, as whenever we divide 0 by anything the result is 0. The third test case is when weight is a positive number and height is 0. So here is when it gets interesting, because if we divide any number by 0, the result is infinity. And in our case, this should not be a correct result. So what we should check in our method is, if height is 0, then we should disregard this value and we should return a invalid statement to the caller. And since our method returns a decimal value, we cannot return the string invalid from it. So we will return -1, because in programming term -1 is generally being considered as invalid. So if height is 0, then we should return -1. The test case 4 is when weight is a negative number where height is a positive number. In this case also it's an invalid case and we should return -1. And the fifth case is when weight is positive and height is negative. Again we should return -1 in this case as well, because this test case is also invalid. So all these 5 different cases test our calculate BMI method with different values, and if we get the correct result from the calculate BMI method, then this means our method is behaving properly and there is no bug or no error with our method. Now let's talk about the second method, which is calculate pace. And for this method as well, I came up with 5 different tests. The first one is with positive numbers for both distance and minutes. When the distance is 10 km and minutes is 60, then we are expecting the result as 10 km per hour. The second case is when distance is 10 but minutes is 0. Again, it's a divide by 0 situation and we should get invalid result from our calculate pace method. So it should return -1. The case 3 is when the distance is 0. So in this case, the result should be 0. The fourth and fifth test case are either the distance is negative or the minutes is negative. In both cases, we should get -1 in our results. So these are the test cases that I came up with. If you guys have any other test case in your mind, please do comment that in the Q&A section so that we all get to know about it. And this way we all will be learning. Now let's go back to our developer console, and there I have already written the skeleton for our fitness test class, and let's have a look at it. So here in developer console we have our fitness class which has 2 methods, and I have already written the fitness test class as well with all those test cases that we have just discussed. First we are testing our calculate BMI method, so there are in total 5 tests for it, and I have named them as calculate BMI test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4 and test 5. And all of these test methods has different weight and height values. And I have also called the calculate BMI method from the fitness class in these test methods, and I have also written the assert statements as well. For example, when the weight is 60 and height is 1.2, then we'll call the calculate BMI method with these values. We'll store the result in a decimal variable called result, and then here we are comparing our result. So the result should be 41.67. So this is our expected value. this will be the actual value, and this is the message that we want to show if the result is incorrect. And the similar test cases we have for the calculate pace method as well. So in total we have 5 test methods for the calculate pace method as well, and all of these test methods have different distance and minutes value, and I have already called the calculate pace method from here, and I have written the assert statement as well. So nothing new that I've done here, is just to save us some time. I have written all these values and assert statements that we have just discussed. Now let's execute this class, and if we get all the test methods as pass and we don't get any error, that means both our methods are working fine with correct behavior and we don't need to modify our code. But if any of the test method fails, then we need to take a look and maybe we need to modify our code as well. So let's go back to the fitness test class and click on run test. Let's open this panel, go to the test, and here we see the status is failed. So I can see that 3 of the test methods passed successfully, but 7 of them are having errors. So the test methods that got passed is calculate pace test 1, calculate pace test 3, and calculate BMI test 2. Now let's discuss all of these tests one by one. So our calculate BMI test 1 is failing. So let's get the result of this method and we'll get to see the error. And this is our calculate BMI test 1. So it says the BMI should be 41.67 for 60 kg weight and 1.2 meter height. So the expected value was 41.67, but the actual value that we have got has a lot of digits after the dot here, which we do not want. But if you like this to be the same way, then what you can do, like you can copy this value and paste it inside your test method, and this should pass. But I don't want to get this big of result. What I want is, I only want 2 digits after the dot. So if you go to the Google and search for decimal class in Apex, this is the first link that we'll get. And let's go to this link. I'm going to explore all the methods from the decimal class. So here we have a link called decimal methods, and this decimal class has a method called setScale, which returns the decimal scale to a specified number of the decimal places, and that's what we want. We want to limit the decimal places to 2 only. So we have got a method and we need to use it. So let's go back to our test class, and here once we get the result, we will scale this result to only 2 decimals. So let's overwrite the value of result variable, and we are going to overwrite it with the setScale method, and I'm going to limit the decimals to only 2. Now this should give us 41.67. Let's change it back to 67. Let's save our code and run our tests again. At least the BMI test 1 method should pass. Okay, so we can see that our BMI test 1 method is passing. Now let's talk about the BMI test 2. And I can see that it's already passing, so there is no issue with this test method or this test case. Now let's move to the third one, which is calculate BMI test 3. So let's open the result for this method, and it says there is an exception thrown by our code because it's dividing by 0, and we do not want that, right? So for this we need to make a change in our fitness class. Here we need to make sure that whenever the height is 0, then we don't execute this code, because height 0 is an invalid value and we should directly return -1. So we can simply handle it with the if condition. I can say like if height is equals to 0, then return -1, because that's what we want to return. Else we can return our result. And having this else statement is completely optional here, because if you have a return statement in between a method, then whenever this return statement gets executed, none of the lines after that return statement gets executed. So if your height is 0, then this if condition will be true and we will reach to line number 15 and our execution will stop on this line itself. We will never come to line number 17 or 18. Only if the height is not equals to 0, then we will execute line number 17 or 18. So let's save this code again, and this time our calculate BMI test 3 should also pass. Let's open our results, and I see that our calculate BMI test 3 is also passing. We have already started making changes in both our test methods and in our test class. So this means our code was not 100% accurate or correct previously. We had to make changes, and that's the benefit that we get from the unit test. Now let's move to the BMI test 4, and here let's open our results, and it says invalid input. Expected is -1, but in actual we are getting something like -41.6666 or something, right? The reason why we get it is because our calculate BMI method is not handling negative values, and if any of the weight or height value is negative, then we want to return -1. So here in this condition itself we can use OR as well, this mathematical OR condition, and here I can check if weight is less than 0. So either the height is 0 or if the weight is less than 0, I need to return -1. I can also modify my first condition, which says like height equals to 0. I can change it to if height is less than or equals to 0, because in both cases we want to return -1. So as soon as we modify this condition here and save our code, I think our test 4 and test 5 should also pass, because now we are handling both the negative values. So let's click on run test again. And I can see that all our calculate BMI test methods are passing from 1 to 5. Now there are some issues with calculate pace method, and I can see that first and third is passing, where second, fourth and fifth are not passing. So let's open the results. The third one is very same to what we have just discussed, where we are getting an exception which is divided by 0. So we will handle it in our calculate pace method. And the remaining ones are also similar, where we are not handling the negative values. So let's go back to our fitness class and let's go to our calculate pace method. And here I can simply check if distance is less than 0 or if minutes less than or equals to 0. In both cases we want to return -1, else we'll calculate the pace and return the pace. So let's save this code, and finally I think all our tests should pass, and we should also get the 100% code coverage. So this time we see the status is passed and all our tests are passing. So this is why the writing the unit tests are so important, because these two methods, they looked so simple, but still we have found at least 2 or 3 bugs in these two methods. And we would have not found these bugs if we would have not tested these methods with all type of different values, like for negative values, for positive values, for zeros and everything, right? So now our code is more accurate and it's more bug free just because of our unit tests. Now let's check the code coverage of our class, and it's 100%. So this is all in this video. I hope you enjoyed this challenge. If you think there can be more test cases to test these two methods, please do comment those in the Q&A section.